Saturn conjunct North Node in Synastry. This is my astrology Synastry series. Saturn conjunct the North Node Synastry is similar to Mars squaring Saturn Synastry that I've already covered. I compared Mars square Saturn Synastry to that of a parent-child relationship where the Mars person was like a child or immature person being with a more seasoned, mature, and a no-nonsense kind of person. I find that Saturn conjunct North Node Synastry has the same qualities and vibe. There's a profound misconception in the astrological world that the South Node opposite to the North Node should be negated and moved away from, and that's a misleading and damaging perspective to have because the South Node is where it's who we are and have been. If anyone finds that they have changed and are no longer who they once were or in a place they've once been in, that's because they've grown in that particular area. None of us would be where we are today if it wasn't for the past, both good and bad. The past is the South Node and should never be disregarded. The South Node dictates and gauges our growth as people, and in this case, relationships. I used to fall for sweet nothings, hard dick, and bubblegum, which is my past. And, I'm thankfully have grown from through trial and error. I used to be naive until life or a person played the role of Saturn in my life to push me into maturity and growth, which is another way to perceive the North Node. I needed the South Node as a footstool to grow into my North Node. If I was like most people, I would negate the South Node and ultimately never learn or grow. The past dictates your future, for the good or bad. Anyone speaking on moving away from the South Node or acting as if it's bad is wrong. Sure, circumstances may be bad when you're operating in South Node energy, but anyone successful or maturing use the South Node as motivation, ultimately never forgetting where they came from, so to speak. The astrology and tarot community speaks on the South Node as if others need to forget about it completely, and that's just not right. Now, with that understanding, we can move on to interpreting this synastry aspect. As always, Saturn is the disciplinarian in any synastry aspect. There's yet another misconception that Saturn governs lessons in life when actuality Jupiter is. The beloved Jupiter is the teacher dishing out lessons. Jupiter gives out our lessons, and for some they are hard, but everyone rather blames Saturn for anything hard. Saturn is the disciplinarian when we do not learn the lesson. Saturn is the consequences for our lack of action or overcoming in that particular area or in a particular error. I find myself educating while trying to interpret the synastry aspect, and that's the vibe for the North Node person in the synastry. Anytime Saturn is involved, it's because someone is not learning, growing, or in simpler terms, not getting it. And so therefore, consequences are issued out. Most people want to blame anyone and everything but themselves when their life, and in this case, relationship is getting hard. And that mentality is equivalent to most people blaming Saturn for things being hard in their life. Example, the North Node person can be a cheater and has always gotten away with it before, like South Node energy. Think of it like this. You're in school and you've always cheated on your tests without getting caught. You've gotten so far in your schooling because you've been evading studying and resorting to cheating, and then you come across a new teacher who dishes out a harder test and homework. You get exposed, caught even, and then there's consequences. The teacher is Jupiter and Saturn is the consequences. As the North Node person, your South Node behavior gets exposed. What you've always done isn't going to work anymore. Therefore, as the North Node person, you will try to blame the Saturn person as someone who is making the synastry difficult when really your old behavior is the problem. Casting blame on everyone else but yourself is what causes consequences and difficulty in the synastry. The Saturn person is just easier to blame instead of, i.e., the North Node person. I used to blame those hard dick, sweet talkers in the past for hurting me, lying to me, and cheating on me, and I kept making the same mistakes because it was everyone but me. Those liars and cheaters were playing the role of Saturn to me. I was the victim, the South Node person. However, it wasn't until I took accountability that I no longer attracted liars and cheaters, but I also matured into my North Node energy. I no longer have consequences to suffer through. I learned that I was the problem, not those liars and cheaters. The difference with Mars square Saturn synastry is the Mars person rebelling and being angry at the Saturn person because the Saturn person expects more and believes the Mars person can be more. With Saturn conjunct North Node, this energy is about taking accountability for your actions, past behaviors that are being repeated, and owning your punishment, consequences like being cheated on constantly and not learning from it. What is the common denominator? Who is the common denominator? As always, conjunctions do not guarantee roses. Sometimes conjunctions hit harder than squares and oppositions. You may think, wrongfully, the person you have a conjunction with is on your side and will agree with you harmoniously, but sometimes two of the same thing exemplifies the energy in a negative manner. There isn't a balance, and you can't play the player, so to speak, with those you share a conjunction in synastry with. A lot of people try to get over or take advantage of someone else who is opposite to them, but when someone is the same, thinks, acts, and feels the same way as you, it's harder to get over with things or play games. The North Node conjunct Saturn gives off the energy of you got the right one today. Again, Saturn is only employed in any synastry to reveal that someone in the mix needs consequences for not learning when they had the opportunity. The beloved Jupiter is the teacher, and some teachers are nice until they get taken advantage of or disrespected long enough. And then the principal, a higher authority or a parent gets involved, and there's no more games. It's ass whooping time. The North Node person in the synastry is still the South Node person, and the Saturn person has come in to whip them into shape and to mature into the North Node person unconsciously. Now, the Saturn person is literally matching the North Node person's energy. This is truly a karmic synastry, and they aren't meant to be together long term. The moment the North Node person evolves and matures, there's no need for the Saturn person. Saturn isn't here to directly teach a lesson in terms of sitting someone down, giving wisdom like Mars square synastry. Saturn conjunct North Node is literally karmic and riddled with difficulties, making life harder for the North Node person to become the North Node person officially. I hope that makes sense. An example of this would be the North Node person, who really acts like the South Node person, is used to cheating on their partners. So the North Node person meets the Saturn person, and the Saturn person starts cheating on the North Node person. Now the North Node person, who is really a South Node person, will experience what it feels like to be cheated on. This relationship will be long-term in the event that the North Node person refuses to actually become the North Node person. This couple will go tit for tat until one day the North Node person finally learns by trial and error. It may take the North Node person getting the Saturn person pregnant or vice versa and being weighed down by bills, drama, cheating, lies, etc. for the North Node person to finally get it. The Saturn person isn't sitting the North Node person down in a mature manner saying it's time to grow up. No, the Saturn person is reflecting back the North Node person who's really acting out in South Node energy to unconsciously make them grow up. Another example. Let's say the North Node person who is really behaving like a South Node person gets locked up. They get locked up and keep fighting and getting in trouble in jail, and each time their jail sentence just gets longer. The judge, the correction officers, and extended jail sentences aren't sitting the North Node person down saying, please do better. No, they just keep extending the punishment until the North Node person says to themselves, I need to stop fighting and getting in trouble. Only I can change my ways, no one else. That extended jail sentence is equivalent to Saturn. Saturn is consequences, not someone giving wisdom and harsh lessons. It's consequences for not adhering to the lesson, aka the opportunity. The punishment for your actions and no one else's. Hopefully this doesn't get too overwhelming or confusing, but it's clear for me because it took pain for me to realize that I was the problem. It took getting hurt multiple times over and over in the same manner for me to realize that I was the problem, not others. In conclusion, the synastry aspect will last however long it takes for the North Node person to really become the North Node person. Saturn wouldn't be present if otherwise. It'll be the North Node person to finally leave the Saturn person alone. Hopefully it's not too late. Hopefully it doesn't take jail, multiple babies, STDs, continuous setbacks, unhappiness, entrapment, child support, drama, fighting, abuse, cheating, lies, and hell for the North Node person to finally get set into their North Node energy. Again, though this is North Node conjunct synastry, conjunct Saturn synastry, it's really describing South Node conjunct Saturn or South Node opposite Saturn. If you're being cheated on, are you going to go back? Are you going to cheat back or leave? A mature person would leave. If you're being verbally abused, are you going to be abusive back or leave? A mature person would leave. If you're losing money, opportunities, and your peace of mind in a relationship, are you going to stay, become resentful and bitter, or leave? A mature person would leave, and so forth. The point is, the North Node person who's really acting out in South Node energy needs to mature, right? whatever the Saturn person is bringing or dishing into this relationship, it's for the North Node person to actually mature into a North Node person, right? So there's that. I would say more, but we'll leave it at that. And this is my interpretation of Saturn conjunct the North Node in Synastry.